What if the smallest changes in your daily life could lead to the biggest transformations? Atomic Habits by James Clear reveals how tiny, consistent actions can compound into extraordinary results. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Join us as we explore the science of building better habits and unlocking your full potential, one step at a time. Chapter 1: The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. In Chapter 1 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces the idea that small, incremental changes, what he calls atomic habits, can lead to remarkable results. He starts with a powerful story of British cycling, where a seemingly minor adjustment in daily habits, such as cleaning the seats of bikes or adjusting tire pressure, led to extraordinary success for the team. This sets the tone for the entire book, that tiny habits, when done consistently, accumulate into massive changes over time. Clear argues that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just as small deposits grow into large sums of money, small habits, repeated over time, lead to significant improvements in our lives. This concept is grounded in the science of habit formation, and the author highlights that most people underestimate the power of these tiny changes. While we often focus on big goals, the real key to success lies in the systems, the daily actions and habits, that we build to reach those goals. Clear also distinguishes between goals and systems. He explains that goals are the outcomes we want to achieve, but systems are the processes that lead to those results. For example, if you want to be fit, your goal might be to lose 20 pounds. However, your system would involve the daily habit of exercising, eating healthy, and getting enough sleep. Clear emphasizes that focusing on systems, not just goals, is the key to long-term success because systems are what you can control and improve every day. An important point Clear makes is the idea of identity-based habits. Most people try to change their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve, goals, but the real transformation happens when we shift our focus to who we want to become. He shares the example of someone trying to quit smoking. Instead of focusing on the goal of, I want to quit smoking, it's more effective to say, I am the kind of person who doesn't smoke. This subtle change in mindset shifts the focus from behavior to identity and helps in making habits more sustainable. This chapter concludes by setting the stage for the rest of the book, where Clear will explore the science behind habits and offer practical strategies for making good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. He invites the reader to think about their own habits and how small, positive changes could lead to extraordinary improvements in their personal and professional lives. Chapter 2: How Your Habits Shape Your Identity, and Vice Versa. In Chapter 2 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces the concept of identity-based habits. This chapter is pivotal because it dives deep into how our habits are not just actions we perform, but also reflections of our identity, the kind of person we believe ourselves to be. Clear argues that lasting change doesn't come from focusing on outcomes or results alone, but from shifting our identity. The key idea here is that every action we take is a vote for the type of person we want to become. Whether it's deciding to exercise, read, or even break a bad habit, we are continuously reinforcing who we believe ourselves to be. If you want to build better habits, the first step is to change the way you think about yourself. Instead of saying, I want to be the kind of person who runs every day, you should think, I am a runner. This shift in mindset creates a sense of belonging to the desired identity, making it easier to adopt the associated habits. Clear gives a compelling example to illustrate this point. He contrasts two people trying to quit smoking. One person says, I'm trying to quit smoking, while the other says, I'm not a smoker. The difference is subtle but powerful. By claiming their identity as a non-smoker, the second person is more likely to resist temptation because their action aligns with their self-image. In essence, the behaviors you repeat will eventually shape who you believe you are, which makes habits more sustainable in the long run. The chapter also explains how people often try to make changes by focusing on goals, but this can lead to short-term results. While goals are important, Clear suggests that the deeper, more effective way to change behavior is to build habits that align with the person you want to become. He introduces the idea of identity layers, the beliefs, values, and identity you carry with you. If your habits reflect the person you want to be, these habits will feel more natural and become easier to maintain. Clear emphasizes that this process of changing your identity is gradual and requires patience. It's not about making a dramatic shift overnight but about making small, consistent changes that align with the identity you wish to develop. For example, if you want to be a healthy eater, don't just focus on dieting or weight loss. Instead, think of yourself as someone who enjoys healthy food, and this will make healthier choices easier to make in the future. He also highlights the importance of reinforcing this identity through small wins. Each time you make a choice that aligns with your desired identity, you are essentially casting a vote for that new version of yourself. These small victories build momentum and compound over time, leading to a significant transformation. It's not about having one perfect day, but about stringing together many small, positive actions that align with the person you want to become. This chapter ends by emphasizing that identity-based habits are the foundation of real, lasting change. Clear challenges the reader to think beyond the superficial aspects of habit formation, like setting a goal, and to focus on the deeper, more meaningful aspect of identity. He promises that the strategies in the following chapters will help solidify these ideas and make identity-based habit change possible for anyone. Chapter 3: How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps. In Chapter 3, James Clear takes us deeper into the mechanics of habit formation by explaining the 4 laws of behavior change, which are essential for building good habits and breaking bad ones. These 4 laws, cue, craving, response, and reward, form the foundation of any habit. Clear uses these laws to provide a clear framework for understanding how habits work and, more importantly, how we can shape them to our advantage. The first law is cue. Every habit begins with a cue, or a trigger, that prompts us to start a behavior. Cues can come in many forms: external events, internal feelings, or even environmental factors. For instance, if you see your gym bag by the door, that can be the cue that prompts you to go for a run. The key to forming a good habit is to make sure that your cues are specific and easy to notice, so they can prompt the behavior you want to cultivate. Clear also explains that cues can be linked to specific times of day or locations, making it easier to trigger the habit consistently. Next comes craving. After we experience the cue, we start to crave the rewards that we expect from completing the habit. This craving is the desire for the feeling or benefit that comes from the behavior. For example, you might crave the sense of accomplishment or energy that comes from a workout. Clear emphasizes that the craving is what gives us the motivation to continue the habit. The stronger the craving, the more likely we are to repeat the behavior. To build better habits, it's essential to associate positive feelings or rewards with the behavior, which makes the craving stronger and reinforces the habit loop. The third law is response, which is the actual behavior we perform when the craving hits. This is the part where you take action, whether it's exercising, eating a healthy meal, or practicing a new skill. The response is influenced by 2 things: how easy or difficult it is to perform the behavior, and how satisfying it is. The easier a habit is to complete, the more likely it is that we'll stick with it. Clear encourages readers to start small with habits, focusing on easy-to-achieve goals that are simple and not overwhelming. For example, instead of committing to an hour of exercise right away, start with just 5 minutes, which can grow into a more substantial habit over time. The final law is reward, which is the outcome we receive from completing the habit. The reward serves as the reinforcement that helps us remember the habit and motivates us to repeat it. Clear explains that rewards are necessary because they create a feedback loop in the brain, making the habit more likely to stick. The challenge here is that some rewards are immediate, like the relief you feel after eating junk food, while others are delayed, like the long-term benefits of a workout. Clear suggests that finding ways to make the rewards more immediate, or at least feel more tangible, can help maintain motivation in the long run. Clear also highlights that to break a bad habit, you simply reverse the 4 laws. If you want to stop a habit, you can make the cue invisible, the craving unattractive, the response difficult, and the reward unsatisfying. For instance, if you want to stop watching too much TV, you can remove the remote from your living room cue, replace it with something more appealing, craving, make it harder to access the TV response, and stop rewarding yourself with the pleasure of watching shows. This chapter wraps up by explaining that these 4 laws form the foundation of all habits. Whether you're trying to build a new habit or break a bad one, understanding how each of these components works gives you a powerful toolkit for change. Clear emphasizes that small, incremental changes, those that fit within the 4 laws, can lead to lasting transformations. The chapter sets the stage for more detailed strategies in the upcoming chapters, where Clear will dive deeper into each of the laws and explain how to apply them in practical, everyday situations. Chapter 4, The Man Who Didn't Look Right. In Chapter 4 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces the concept of the cue, which is the trigger for every habit we perform. A habit starts with a cue, a signal that prompts the brain to initiate a particular behavior. Clear emphasizes that understanding cues is critical to habit formation, as they are the first step in the habit loop. The chapter dives into how we can design our environment and routines to make good habits more obvious and bad habits harder to fall into. Clear begins with a powerful story, a man who survived a near-fatal accident and, after rehabilitation, had difficulty trusting his sense of intuition. He could no longer automatically sense whether someone was lying to him or in a dangerous situation. This story illustrates how the brain relies on cues to guide decisions and behaviors, even in complex or life-or-death situations. The man's challenge was that his brain's ability to recognize the right cues had become impaired, leaving him without the ability to make the right decisions. The power of cues in shaping our behavior. Clear emphasizes that most habits are started by an environmental or emotional cue. For example, a person might feel stressed, an emotional cue, which leads them to eat comfort food, a behavior. Or they may walk past a gym, an environmental cue, and decide to work out. The cue is what sparks the habit, and without it, the habit doesn't occur. Cues can be external, like seeing a person you're used to meeting at a particular time, or internal, like feeling a certain emotion. One key point Clear makes is that the cues we encounter on a daily basis have the power to shape our behavior in ways we might not even realize. For example, the mere presence of a phone can trigger the automatic behavior of checking social media or responding to messages. This is an example of how our environment can influence our habits by constantly bombarding us with cues that promote certain behaviors. Clear goes on to explain that we don't always notice cues because they often become automatic over time. The more a habit is repeated, the more ingrained it becomes in our brain, and the less we consciously think about it. For example, if you always drink coffee first thing in the morning, seeing the coffee machine or even just feeling tired might be enough to trigger the behavior. Eventually, we don't need to think about it, we just do it. How to make cues work for you. One of the most important strategies Clear introduces in this chapter is cue design. This involves intentionally designing your environment to make the cues for good habits more visible and the cues for bad habits less prominent. By making good habits easier to trigger, you can set yourself up for success with less effort. For instance, if you want to drink more water, placing a water bottle in your bag or on your desk makes it easier to remember to drink throughout the day. If you want to eat healthier, you could place fruits and vegetables in a prominent spot in your kitchen where they are easy to see and access. By doing this, the environment itself becomes a trigger for the desired behavior, reducing the need for willpower. Clear also discusses habit stacking, a technique where you pair a new habit with an existing one. For example, if you want to floss more regularly, you can pair it with brushing your teeth, something you already do every day. The idea is that the existing habit acts as a cue to start the new one. This strategy makes it easier to introduce new behaviors into your routine by leveraging existing cues that are already part of your life. The role of context in habit formation. Another key idea Clear emphasizes in this chapter is that context plays a crucial role in habit formation. Our behaviors are often shaped by the context in which we find ourselves. The same behavior can be triggered by different cues depending on the situation. For example, the act of eating may be triggered by hunger at home but by social cues when you're out with friends. Understanding this allows you to adapt your environment to promote the behaviors you want to engage in and minimize the ones you want to avoid. Clear also touches on how specific cues can become associative triggers. Over time, certain places, people, or situations can become associated with particular habits. For example, if you always meet a friend at a cafe to discuss your goals, the cafe might become a cue for that type of conversation. These associative triggers are important because they help cement habits into your routine by connecting them with a specific context or environment. The importance of awareness in habit change. The chapter concludes with the idea that awareness is the first step in changing any habit. Clear stresses that to change a habit, you must first identify the cues that lead to the behavior. Many people perform habits without thinking about the cues that start them. By becoming more mindful of the cues, you can start to understand why you behave the way you do and how you can change your environment to promote healthier habits. Clear suggests starting by tracking your habits and the cues that trigger them. This could involve keeping a habit journal where you note the times and situations in which a habit occurs. By tracking the context around your behaviors, you can identify patterns and start to make intentional changes to your environment that support your desired outcomes. Chapter 5: The Best Way to Start a New Habit. In Chapter 5 of Atomic Habits, James Clear focuses on one of the most crucial aspects of habit formation: how to start a new habit successfully. The chapter is centered around a simple but powerful strategy called implementation intentions. This technique is designed to make your habits more specific and actionable, which greatly increases the likelihood of following through. Clear begins by acknowledging a common challenge in habit formation: we often fail to start new habits because we don't make a concrete plan. While goals are motivating, they're often too vague to lead to lasting behavior change. For instance, simply saying, "I want to exercise more," isn't enough. The lack of specificity makes it easy to let the habit slip. The solution, Clear suggests, is to use implementation intentions, which involve making a clear, concrete plan of when and where you will perform the habit. Implementation intentions follow a simple formula: I will, behavior, at, time, in, location. This could be something like, I will meditate for 5 minutes at 7 a.m. in my living room. The beauty of this strategy is that it creates a clear roadmap for when and where you'll take action, leaving little room for ambiguity or procrastination. By planning your habit down to the specifics, you eliminate the decision-making process that often leads to failure. This approach takes advantage of the power of automaticity. Once the plan is set, you're more likely to act without hesitation. Clear also explores the concept of habit stacking, a technique that can be especially helpful when trying to form new habits. Habit stacking involves attaching your new habit to an existing one. The idea is that you find a habit that you already do consistently and then stack your new behavior on top of it. For example, if you already have the habit of brushing your teeth every morning, you could stack a new habit of drinking a glass of water right after brushing your teeth. The key is to make the new habit as easy as possible by leveraging something you already do routinely. One of the reasons habit stacking is so effective is that it helps you take advantage of an established habit's cue. The cue for brushing your teeth, the feeling of waking up and starting your day, can now trigger the new habit, drinking water. This makes the new behavior easier to remember and incorporate into your day. Over time, as the new habit becomes more automatic, it will require less mental effort to perform. Clear also explains the power of starting small. When creating new habits, it's tempting to go all in and aim for big changes right away. However, this can lead to burnout or frustration when progress is slow. Instead, Clear advocates for a 2-minute rule, which involves scaling down your new habit to something that can be completed in just 2 minutes. The idea is that starting small makes the behavior feel more manageable and less intimidating. For example, if you want to start reading more books, the 2-minute rule would suggest that you simply read 1 page each day. The goal is not to achieve the full habit right away but to make it so easy to start that it's hard to fail. Starting small also has a psychological benefit: it helps to build momentum. Once you start the behavior, you'll often find that you're motivated to continue beyond the initial 2 minutes. For example, after reading 1 page, you might naturally feel like reading a few more pages. The key takeaway here is that it's easier to build consistency by focusing on getting started, even if the action is small. The chapter also covers the idea of friction in habit formation. Friction refers to any obstacle or challenge that makes a behavior harder to do. Clear suggests that to build new habits, you should reduce friction as much as possible. For example, if your goal is to exercise in the morning, you could prepare your gym clothes the night before, so there's no friction when you wake up. Making your habits as easy as possible to perform increases the likelihood that you'll follow through. Clear also touches on the importance of tracking your habits. Keeping a visual record of your progress, such as checking off each day that you complete a habit, can create a sense of accomplishment and encourage you to keep going. This method is often referred to as a streak, and it can be a powerful motivator. The idea is that the longer your streak, the more likely you are to continue the habit because you don't want to break the chain. Finally, this chapter concludes by emphasizing that the key to starting a new habit is consistency, not perfection. Even if you miss a day or slip up, don't get discouraged. The goal is to return to the habit as quickly as possible. The most successful people don't always follow through perfectly, but they consistently return to their habits over time, which leads to eventual success. Chapter 6: Motivation is overrated, environment often matters more. In Chapter 6 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explores the concept that motivation alone is not enough to build lasting habits. Instead, he emphasizes the power of the environment in shaping our behavior. Clear argues that the key to lasting change is not about relying on willpower or motivation, which can fluctuate, but about optimizing your environment to make the desired habits easier to perform and the bad habits harder to do. Clear begins by explaining how our environment shapes our behaviors in subtle but powerful ways. He highlights that most people try to change their habits by focusing on internal factors like motivation or self-discipline. While these qualities can help in the short term, they're unreliable because they depend on willpower, which is limited. On the other hand, the environment you're in has a much stronger influence on your habits, as it constantly triggers behaviors without you even realizing it. One of the key points Clear makes is that environment design can be a powerful tool for habit formation. By rearranging or adjusting your surroundings, you can make positive habits easier to perform and negative ones harder to carry out. For example, if you want to eat healthier, keeping healthy food visible and easily accessible in your kitchen can nudge you toward better choices. Conversely, if you're trying to avoid junk food, storing unhealthy snacks out of sight, or even out of the house, can reduce temptation. Clear introduces the concept of cue design, which refers to strategically placing cues in your environment that prompt the desired behavior. For example, if you want to remember to meditate every morning, you could leave your meditation cushion next to your bed so that the moment you wake up, it's a visual reminder. This form of cue design takes advantage of the automaticity of habits. When your environment constantly reminds you of your goals, it reduces the mental effort required to get started. He also explores the idea of temptation bundling, a technique that involves pairing an activity you enjoy with one that you want to form a habit around. For instance, if you love watching your favorite TV show but want to exercise more, you could only allow yourself to watch the show while on the treadmill or while doing an exercise routine. This makes the exercise more enjoyable by associating it with something pleasurable, and over time, the habit becomes more ingrained. Clear also emphasizes that the design of your environment can either help or hinder your ability to build good habits. For example, if you're trying to focus on work but your desk is cluttered with distractions like your phone or snacks, it will be much harder to stay on task. By simplifying your workspace and removing distractions, you can create an environment that supports focus and productivity. Clear calls this the third law of behavior change, which is making your cues obvious. The more you make your environment support your goals, the more likely you are to stick to the habits that align with them. Clear also touches on the idea of social environments and how the people you surround yourself with can influence your habits. He points out that humans are social creatures, and we tend to adopt the habits, values, and behaviors of the people we interact with the most. If you want to adopt a habit, joining a group of people who already practice that behavior can be incredibly helpful. For example, if you want to start exercising more, joining a gym or a fitness community can increase your chances of sticking with it, because you're surrounded by others who support and reinforce the same behavior. The chapter also highlights that the opposite is true for bad habits. If you surround yourself with people who engage in unhealthy behaviors or negative patterns, it can be harder to break free from those habits. For instance, if your friends frequently eat unhealthy food or engage in activities that don't align with your goals, you may find it harder to maintain your healthy eating habits or exercise routine. This reinforces the importance of not only designing your physical environment but also considering your social environment when trying to change your habits. Clear concludes this chapter by stressing that while motivation is often seen as the key to success, it is actually our environment that plays a much larger role in shaping our behavior. Rather than relying on fleeting bursts of motivation, we can design our environment in a way that makes good habits more attractive and bad habits more difficult. By making small changes to our surroundings, we can set ourselves up for success and take advantage of the automatic cues that our environment constantly provides. Chapter 7: The Secret to Self-Control. In Chapter 7 of Atomic Habits, James Clear dives into the concept of self-control and how we can use our habits to better manage our behavior. He challenges the common belief that self-control is all about willpower and discipline, arguing instead that creating an environment that makes good habits easier and bad habits harder is the real secret to self-control. This chapter is vital for anyone who struggles with resisting temptations or maintaining long-term habits, as Clear offers a solution that doesn't rely on raw willpower alone. Clear begins by explaining the misconception that self-control is something we either have or don't have. Many people believe that the key to changing bad habits or sticking to new ones is simply a matter of willpower. This often leads to failure because willpower is a finite resource that gets depleted throughout the day. As Clear puts it, the more decisions you make, the less self-control you have. So, trying to rely on willpower to resist temptation becomes increasingly difficult as the day progresses. Instead of focusing on willpower, Clear proposes a more sustainable approach, designing our environments in a way that reduces the need for self-control. This approach shifts the focus from exerting willpower to creating an environment that makes it easier to choose the right behavior. By eliminating friction for good habits and increasing friction for bad ones, we can achieve more with less effort. Clear introduces the concept of inversion of the third law, which is to make bad habits more difficult. If we want to break a bad habit, such as overeating or spending too much time on social media, we need to increase the difficulty of accessing those behaviors. For example, you could delete apps on your phone that distract you or lock unhealthy snacks away where they're harder to reach. These simple adjustments to your environment help reduce the chances of giving in to temptation, thus requiring less willpower to maintain self-control. Conversely, to build a good habit, Clear emphasizes the importance of reducing friction to make it easier to perform the desired behavior. For example, If you want to read more books, you could leave a book on your pillow so that you're more likely to pick it up before bed. By making the desired habit as easy and convenient as possible, you remove the barriers to doing it and make it more automatic. Small changes to your environment that decrease friction can lead to massive improvements in your overall behavior. Clear also talks about the role of temptation bundling in strengthening self-control. Temptation bundling is a strategy where you link a behavior you want to do with a behavior you need to do. For instance, if you love watching your favorite TV show but want to exercise more, you could decide that you'll only watch the show while you're on the treadmill or doing another form of exercise. This method uses positive reinforcement, which makes the habit more enjoyable and increases your motivation to stick with it. One of the key insights Clear provides in this chapter is that self-control isn't about resisting temptation in the moment, but rather about setting yourself up for success in advance. He emphasizes that when we make decisions in the heat of the moment, we often act impulsively or against our long-term goals. By designing our environment in a way that minimizes the chances of temptation, we can reduce the need for self-control altogether. This is why environment design is so important. It's a preemptive strategy that helps prevent us from having to use willpower to resist. Clear also discusses the importance of automating good habits. When you set up systems that make positive behaviors easier, you create an environment that supports your goals automatically. For example, setting up an automatic savings plan can make it easier to save money because the process is automated and requires no active decision-making. Similarly, creating routines around good habits, such as exercising at a specific time each day, makes it easier to stay consistent without relying on willpower. This chapter concludes by reiterating that self-control is not about exerting more effort or using more willpower, it's about making the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. Instead of trying to resist temptation, Clear encourages readers to focus on designing an environment that minimizes temptation and maximizes the chances of success. This proactive approach to behavior change is more effective than trying to exercise self-control in the moment. Chapter 8: How to Make Good Habits Inevitable and Bad Habits Impossible. In Chapter 8 of Atomic Habits, James Clear delves into the topic of habit continuity and explores how to design systems that ensure good habits are inevitable and bad habits are almost impossible to perform. The focus here is on creating an environment and system where desired behaviors happen automatically, without relying too much on motivation, willpower, or discipline. The chapter offers practical strategies for making new habits stick and for eliminating the friction that makes bad habits so easy to repeat. Clear begins by stressing that consistency is more important than perfection when it comes to habits. While it's tempting to think that you must follow through with a habit perfectly every time, the key to success lies in setting up a system where your good habits happen almost automatically. This system is built on making small, incremental improvements that over time lead to major changes. The main idea here is that small, consistent actions are what lead to results, not huge, perfect efforts. The central theme of the chapter is that the environment plays a crucial role in shaping behavior. Clear asserts that instead of focusing all of your energy on trying to control your willpower or motivation, the most effective strategy is to optimize your environment so that your good habits are as easy as possible to perform and your bad habits are as hard as possible to carry out. By making small changes to your environment, whether that's where you keep your workout clothes, how you structure your workday, or the people you surround yourself with, you can significantly influence your behavior. Clear also introduces the concept of commitment devices, which are strategies that lock you into a course of action, making it difficult or impossible to back out. A commitment device can be anything from putting money on the line, for example, agreeing to pay a friend if you fail to meet a certain goal, to setting up a system where there are consequences for failing to follow through with your goals. These devices help make it easier to stick to your commitments, because they introduce external consequences if you don't. One of the most powerful strategies Clear suggests is the idea of pre-commitment. This is when you decide in advance to make certain actions or behaviors unavoidable. For instance, if you want to avoid junk food, you could sign up for a weekly grocery delivery of healthy food, so that you're not tempted to eat unhealthy snacks. Or, if you want to make exercise a regular part of your life, you might schedule workouts with a friend so that you're committed to showing up. The idea is that by locking yourself into a system in advance, you reduce the chances of making poor decisions in the future. Clear discusses the importance of identity in the context of habit formation. He explains that your habits are a reflection of your identity, and therefore, in order to make a habit stick, you must align it with the person you want to be. For example, if you want to become a person who exercises regularly, you should start identifying as an active person rather than as someone who simply exercises occasionally. Clear explains that identity-based habits are more sustainable than goal-based ones because they tap into your sense of self and make the behavior a natural part of who you are. This chapter also touches on the idea of habit tracking, which is another useful tool for making good habits stick. By tracking your progress, you create visual evidence of your consistency, which reinforces the behavior and provides motivation to keep going. Clear emphasizes that tracking doesn't have to be complicated, it could be as simple as marking an X on a calendar every time you complete the behavior. The key is that the act of tracking gives you a visual reminder of your progress and encourages you to keep up the streak. Clear also talks about the concept of environment design in more detail, giving examples of how small changes to your surroundings can make big differences in your behavior. For example, if you want to be more productive, you might organize your workspace so that only the items necessary for work are visible. If you want to read more, you could place books in strategic places around your home, like on your nightstand or next to your couch, so that they're easy to access. The principle behind environment design is that when the cues for your good habits are more visible and accessible, it becomes easier to follow through with them. A critical part of habit continuity is having a backup plan for when things go wrong. Clear acknowledges that no one's habits are perfect, and life will inevitably get in the way. However, having a contingency plan, such as an easy version of the habit you can still do, even on a tough day, can help you stay on track. For example, if your goal is to work out every day but you don't have time for your usual routine, doing a quick 5-minute exercise can still help you maintain the habit. The key is to not let one missed opportunity derail your entire habit-building process. Clear concludes this chapter by reinforcing that the best way to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible is to make small, deliberate changes to your environment, your systems, and your decisions. By doing so, you can create a life where your good habits are more automatic and your bad habits are harder to engage in. This approach shifts the focus from relying on willpower to creating a structure that supports your desired behaviors. It's a proactive and sustainable way to build lasting habits that align with your long-term goals. Chapter 9, The Goldilocks Rule. In Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces a crucial principle for mastering the art of habit building and behavior change, the Goldilocks Rule. This rule emphasizes that for habits to stick and for us to stay motivated over the long term, the activities we engage in need to be neither too easy nor too difficult. Instead, they should be just challenging enough to keep us engaged and progressing. By finding this sweet spot of challenge, we can experience what Clear calls the flow state, where we're fully immersed and highly motivated. Clear starts by explaining the nature of motivation and how it fluctuates based on how challenging a task is. Too easy, and we get bored; too hard, and we get frustrated. Motivation thrives when we're engaged in tasks that are within our capabilities but still stretch us just enough to feel challenged. The Goldilocks rule is based on the idea that human beings are most motivated when they're working on tasks that are at the sweet spot between boredom and frustration. The power of continuous progress. Clear explains that the key to maintaining motivation for a habit is progress. If we can see improvement, even if it's small, it reinforces our desire to continue. He draws on research from the field of psychology, explaining how people are more motivated when they can see themselves making progress toward a goal. This is why making habits slightly more challenging, but still achievable, is so important. As we improve and see progress, we stay engaged, which makes it more likely that we will stick with the behavior over the long term. Clear also discusses the importance of deliberate practice, which involves focusing on specific skills or aspects of a task that need improvement. Deliberate practice is not just about putting in the hours, it's about intentionally challenging yourself and gradually pushing your boundaries. For instance, a musician doesn't just play the same piece over and over, they focus on parts they struggle with, progressively making each practice session more difficult. This incremental challenge keeps them engaged and ensures continuous improvement. The role of small wins. An essential part of the Goldilocks rule is understanding the value of small wins. Clear argues that small wins, incremental improvements, are a powerful motivator. These wins create a sense of progress, which in turn fuels our desire to continue. For example, if your goal is to write a book, breaking it down into smaller, more manageable chunks like writing 500 words a day helps you experience daily victories that keep you motivated. By breaking larger goals into smaller tasks, you can maintain momentum and build confidence as you see tangible progress. One way to make sure you are consistently experiencing small wins is to track your progress. Clear suggests keeping a habit journal or using a habit tracking app to visually represent your growth. By doing so, you can see how far you've come and how much closer you are to your goal. This can be a huge source of motivation, especially when things get tough. The challenge of staying in the Goldilocks zone. One of the most significant challenges people face is staying in the Goldilocks zone for a prolonged period. It's easy to become complacent once you get comfortable or frustrated when the difficulty level becomes too high. Clear explains that the key to staying in this zone is gradual progression. When you consistently challenge yourself, but not so much that you feel overwhelmed, you can maintain a steady level of improvement and motivation. This is true for any area of life, whether it's learning a new skill, developing a new habit, or working toward long-term goals. Clear emphasizes that motivation isn't a constant force, it fluctuates. Therefore, the Goldilocks rule is about creating an environment where you can maintain steady progress, even when motivation dips. If you can keep pushing yourself just a little further each day, you'll continue to improve and stay engaged in the process. The importance of enjoying the process. Another critical point Clear makes in this chapter is that the journey should be just as enjoyable as the destination. If we don't enjoy the process of improving and mastering a skill, we're unlikely to stick with it for long. Many people set long-term goals, like losing weight or getting fit, but forget to focus on the enjoyment of the activity itself. The process of becoming better at something should bring satisfaction, not just the eventual outcome. Clear suggests focusing on the identity behind the habit. Rather than setting a goal like, I want to lose 10 pounds, focus on becoming a person who enjoys being active or eating healthy. By attaching the habit to your identity, you can find intrinsic motivation and enjoyment in the process, making it easier to stick with in the long run. Using the Goldilocks rule for habit building. Clear concludes the chapter by offering practical advice for applying the Goldilocks rule to habit building. He suggests that, in order to keep progressing and stay motivated, we should focus on making small adjustments to our habits over time. For instance, if you're learning to play a musical instrument, you can start with easy songs and gradually move on to more complex pieces as you improve. This approach ensures that you're always working at a level that challenges you just enough to keep the habit engaging. Clear also emphasizes the importance of reviewing your progress regularly. Looking back at how far you've come and acknowledging your achievements will keep you motivated. Small wins, as he puts it, lead to big results. Chapter 10, The Secret to Self-Control. In Chapter 10 of Atomic Habits, James Clear delves into the concept of self-control and how our environment plays a crucial role in helping us manage our behaviors and habits. He argues that self-control is not about using willpower to resist temptations. Rather, It's about shaping our environment and making it easier to perform the behaviors we want and harder to fall into the habits we want to avoid. The chapter focuses on how we can design our lives to eliminate the need for constant self-control and willpower by proactively controlling our surroundings. Clear begins by discussing the typical view of self-control. Most people think of it as a personal trait, a matter of strength, willpower, and discipline. We assume that the more self-control we have, the more successful we will be in managing our habits. However, Clear challenges this notion by explaining that willpower is a limited resource. In other words, relying on sheer self-control to resist temptation is neither effective nor sustainable over time. Instead, he suggests that the best way to improve our habits is to design an environment that helps us avoid temptations in the first place. Why self-control fails? One of the central points in this chapter is that self-control fails because we put ourselves in environments where bad habits are easy to indulge in. If we are constantly surrounded by cues that trigger our bad habits, we will inevitably give in. For instance, if you're trying to avoid eating junk food, but your kitchen is full of snacks, you're much more likely to give in to temptation. Clear argues that our environment often sabotages our efforts to make good decisions, and this is why relying on willpower alone is ineffective. Clear cites studies that show how people's ability to resist temptation is often dependent on the context in which they find themselves. For example, people tend to eat more unhealthy foods when they are in environments where unhealthy food is easily accessible. Similarly, when people are in environments that make healthy choices more convenient, they tend to make better decisions. This demonstrates how self-control is less about individual strength and more about the environment we create for ourselves. Designing an environment for success. Rather than depending on willpower, Clear suggests that we can make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible by altering our environment. He introduces the idea of environment design, which is about setting up your surroundings to make the right behaviors easier and the wrong behaviors harder. For example, if you want to exercise more regularly, you can make the process as easy as possible by setting out your workout clothes the night before or by placing your gym bag in a visible spot. This reduces friction, making it easier to take the first step toward exercising. On the other hand, to avoid bad habits like watching too much TV or eating unhealthy foods, you can create an environment where those behaviors are harder to perform. For example, you could hide the TV remote or remove junk food from your house. By making the cues for good habits more visible and the cues for bad habits less accessible, you effectively shift the balance in favor of your desired behavior. The role of temptation bundling. Clear also introduces the concept of temptation bundling, a strategy that combines something you want to do with something you need to do. This technique can help you make difficult habits more enjoyable and easier to perform. The idea is to pair a habit you find unattractive or hard to stick with, such as exercising, with an activity you enjoy, like listening to your favorite podcast or music. By pairing the two, you make the hard habit more appealing and create a positive association with it. Temptation bundling works because it leverages the psychological principle of reinforcement, where behaviors that are followed by positive outcomes are more likely to be repeated. By bundling a pleasurable activity with a challenging habit, you create a reward system that reinforces your desired behavior. How to avoid the need for self-control. One of the most important lessons in this chapter is that self-control is less about resisting temptation and more about avoiding it altogether. Clear argues that we can reduce the need for self-control by being strategic about our environment and the decisions we make ahead of time. For example, if you want to eat healthier, you might decide to meal prep in advance, ensuring that you always have healthy meals ready to go. By making decisions about your behavior ahead of time, you eliminate the need for willpower in the moment. Clear also discusses how making small, incremental changes can help reduce the mental strain associated with making decisions. When you design your environment and make your desired behavior the default, you create a system where the right choices are automatic. This makes it easier to stay on track without needing to constantly exert willpower. The science of willpower. Clear goes deeper into the science behind willpower, explaining that it is a limited resource. Research has shown that willpower is like a muscle, its strength can be depleted over time. When we use willpower to resist temptations throughout the day, our ability to make good decisions declines. This is why many people give in to temptation later in the day or after they've already used up their willpower on other tasks. By designing an environment that makes good choices the default, we reduce the need to rely on willpower, which allows us to make better decisions over time. Additionally, Clear explains that our brains are wired to avoid effort. When a task is difficult or requires a lot of energy, our brains naturally resist it. This is why habits that involve less effort are more likely to stick. By making good habits easier and bad habits more difficult, we are essentially aligning our environment with how our brains work best, which increases the likelihood of success. Practical strategies for improving self-control. To wrap up the chapter, Clear offers several practical strategies for improving self-control without relying on willpower. Remove friction for good habits. Make it easier to perform the behaviors you want by reducing the barriers to them. For example, if you want to read more, place books in places where you're likely to see them. Increase friction for bad habits. Make bad behaviors harder to engage in by introducing obstacles. For example, if you want to stop using your phone too much, you could put it out of reach or install apps that block distracting websites. Use temptation bundling. Pair a pleasurable activity with a habit you want to form, making it more enjoyable to stick to your goals. Design your environment. Arrange your surroundings so that good habits are the default and bad habits are less accessible. Make decisions in advance. Plan your habits ahead of time to reduce the need for willpower in the moment. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. In Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces the concept of the importance of long-term consistency and why progress, however slow, is the key to mastery. The chapter emphasizes that success doesn't come from taking massive leaps forward but from making continuous, incremental improvements that add up over time. Clear builds on the principle that small changes, compounded over time, are incredibly powerful, and even if progress feels slow, it is still progress. Clear begins by discussing the nature of improvement and how it's easy to become discouraged when we don't see immediate results. Often, people expect quick outcomes when they start a new habit, but real change takes time. This chapter challenges the common misconception that significant improvement should happen quickly. Instead, Clear focuses on the idea that small, consistent efforts, even when they seem insignificant, can have a massive cumulative effect over the long run. The plateau of latent potential. One of the key concepts in this chapter is the idea of the plateau of latent potential, which Clear uses to describe a period of apparent stagnation that often precedes breakthroughs. When starting a new habit or working toward a goal, there's often a delay between the effort you put in and the results you see. It can feel like you're not making any progress, but in reality, you're laying the groundwork for future success. Over time, small improvements begin to compound, and suddenly, you'll experience an exponential growth curve. Clear uses the example of an ice cube to explain this concept. Imagine you're heating an ice cube from 26 degrees Fahrenheit to 31 degrees Fahrenheit. You see no change in the ice cube, even though you're applying heat. But the moment it reaches 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the ice cube begins to melt rapidly. The temperature needed to change the ice cube was being slowly built up, but you couldn't see the effect until the critical threshold was crossed. This metaphor illustrates how habits work. Progress is often invisible until it suddenly becomes apparent. In many cases, people give up right before their breakthrough, which is why consistency and patience are essential. The power of compounding. Clear highlights the extraordinary power of compounding in achieving long-term success. The idea behind compounding is that the more consistently you practice a behavior or habit, the greater the cumulative effect it will have over time. Much like the concept of compound interest in finance, habits build on each other and grow exponentially as time passes. This principle is what makes small, seemingly insignificant improvements so powerful. Even if you're improving by just 1% each day, those small improvements add up to massive results over the long term. Clear explains that small, continuous improvements are not only more sustainable than trying to make big changes all at once, but they also create momentum. As you make progress, you build confidence, and this momentum makes it easier to stick with your habits. This is why it's crucial not to focus solely on the outcome but to enjoy the process of getting better bit by bit. The more you build habits into your daily routine, the easier it becomes to keep progressing, and soon enough, you'll reach a point where the results are undeniable. The importance of patience and perseverance. A central theme in Chapter 11 is the importance of patience and perseverance. Clear stresses that most people give up too soon because they don't see immediate results. However, success requires sticking with a habit for the long term, even when progress seems slow. It's easy to get discouraged when you don't see immediate changes, but Clear reassures readers that every small action is contributing to a greater goal. He uses the metaphor of planting seeds to illustrate this idea. When you plant a seed, you don't see the tree immediately. However, with time, the roots are growing underground, preparing the tree to eventually sprout above the surface. Habits work in a similar way. The results of your efforts may not be visible right away, but consistent practice and patience will eventually lead to significant transformation. The role of identity in consistency. Clear also discusses how habits are linked to identity and how this plays a role in consistency. When you make small improvements, it is important to recognize how those changes align with the person you want to become. By shifting your focus from goals to identity, you not only create better habits but also make it easier to stick with them. For instance, instead of saying, "I want to run a marathon," focus on becoming the kind of person who enjoys running. When your habits are aligned with your identity, they become more natural and sustainable. This connection between identity and habit building is essential for long-term consistency. Clear suggests that when you identify as someone who works hard to improve, you're more likely to continue making small, consistent efforts, even when they don't seem to lead to immediate results. Identity-based habits are the ones that endure because they become part of who you are. Don't focus on immediate results. In this chapter, Clear warns against obsessing over immediate results. While it's important to track your progress, focusing too much on short-term outcomes can lead to frustration. Instead, it's better to focus on the long-term process and trust that the results will come as a natural consequence of your efforts. This mindset helps you stay patient and focused, even when the changes are gradual. Clear emphasizes that successful people aren't those who achieve their goals in record time. They're the ones who consistently show up, day after day, even when the results aren't immediately visible. The most successful people, according to Clear, are those who persevere through the plateau of latent potential and keep pushing forward, trusting the process. The 2-minute rule. Clear introduces a practical rule for making habits stick, the 2-minute rule. This rule states that any habit can be made more manageable by reducing it to something that takes just 2 minutes to complete. The idea behind this rule is that starting small can help you overcome the initial friction of beginning a habit. Once you start the habit, even if it's just for 2 minutes, you're likely to continue beyond that initial effort. For example, if you want to build a habit of reading more, don't set a goal to read an entire book every day. Instead, start by reading just 1 page or spending just 2 minutes reading. This small, easy action helps you break through resistance and build momentum for longer sessions later on. The key is to make the first step as easy as possible, which reduces friction and makes it more likely that you'll continue with the habit over time. The role of consistency over perfection. Clear concludes the chapter by stressing that consistency is more important than perfection. Perfectionism often leads to burnout, while consistency leads to gradual, sustainable improvement. The idea is to avoid thinking that your efforts need to be flawless. Instead, focus on showing up and doing your best each day, even if it's imperfect. This consistent effort, no matter how small, leads to long-term success. It's easy to feel discouraged when we make mistakes or don't perform perfectly, but Clear urges readers to view those moments as part of the learning process. As long as you're continuing to make progress, even if it's slow, you're moving in the right direction. Chapter 12, The Law of Least Effort. In Chapter 12 of Atomic Habits, James Clear dives into the concept of the law of least effort, explaining how our brains are wired to avoid effort whenever possible. He argues that the easier we can make a habit, the more likely we are to stick with it. Clear explains that people naturally gravitate toward behaviors that require the least amount of energy, so the key to habit formation is reducing friction, making good habits easy, and bad habits hard. This chapter builds on the previous principles by focusing on how we can design our lives in a way that reduces the effort needed for positive habits and increases the effort needed for negative ones. Clear introduces several strategies to help us leverage the law of least effort to make behavior change easier and more sustainable. Understanding the law of least effort. The law of least effort is based on a fundamental principle of human psychology: our brains are wired to conserve energy. This is an evolutionary adaptation designed to help us survive by conserving resources and focusing on tasks that are important for our well-being. As a result, we naturally choose actions that require the least amount of energy, whether that's in terms of physical effort, mental effort, or emotional effort. Clear uses the example of choosing to watch TV instead of going for a run. Watching TV is effortless and easy, while running requires more physical energy, preparation, and mental effort. It's easy to see why people might default to the path of least resistance. The same principle applies to other habits. If a behavior feels too difficult, we're less likely to engage in it, and if it feels easy, we're more likely to stick with it. Making good habits easy. One of the most powerful strategies Clear discusses is reducing friction for positive habits. By making good habits easier to perform, we are more likely to stick with them. This can be achieved by removing obstacles that make a habit harder to complete. For example, if you want to read more, you could place a book on your pillow so that it's the first thing you see when you go to bed. By reducing the friction, in this case, not having to search for a book, you increase the likelihood of following through with the habit. Clear also introduces the concept of environment design, which involves shaping your surroundings to make good habits easier. This can include things like preparing healthy meals in advance or placing your gym clothes by the door so you're reminded to exercise. By arranging your environment to support your goals, you make the desired behavior more automatic and effortless. Making bad habits hard. The opposite of reducing friction for good habits is increasing friction for bad habits. Clear emphasizes that the more difficult we make it to engage in a bad habit, the less likely we are to fall into it. For example, if you want to stop watching TV, you could unplug the television or hide the remote. These small actions create friction that makes it harder to engage in the habit, and as a result, you'll be less likely to give in to temptation. Clear also suggests using visual cues to remind yourself of the effort required for bad habits. For instance, if you're trying to reduce your sugar intake, you might put unhealthy snacks out of sight or store them in a place that's harder to reach. These small changes add friction to the process, making it less likely that you'll indulge in the habit without thinking. The 2-minute rule revisited. Clear revisits the 2-minute rule, which he introduced in an earlier chapter, and explores how it aligns with the law of least effort. The idea behind the 2-minute rule is to reduce a habit to something that takes just 2 minutes to complete, making it so easy that you can't help but do it. The key is that the easier a habit is, the more likely you are to stick with it. For example, if you want to start exercising more, you don't need to commit to a full workout right away. Instead, you could start by simply putting on your workout clothes or doing a single push-up. The goal is to make the habit so easy that it requires little to no effort to begin. Once you've completed the 2-minute version of the habit, it's often easier to continue and extend the behavior. The key takeaway is that habits should start small and easy, and the momentum will carry you forward. The role of habit stacking. Another technique that ties into the law of least effort is habit stacking, which Clear explains as a method for making good habits even easier to adopt. Habit stacking involves attaching a new habit to an existing one. The idea is that if you already have a habit in place that you do consistently, you can stack a new habit on top of it, making it part of your routine. For example, if you already drink a cup of coffee every morning, you can stack the habit of stretching for 5 minutes right after drinking your coffee. Because the first habit is already ingrained in your routine, adding a second habit becomes much easier. By stacking habits, you reduce the mental effort required to remember to do them, and they become more automatic over time. The importance of visual cues and environment design. Clear also emphasizes how visual cues can reduce the effort required to stick to good habits. A simple example is putting your gym bag in your car, so when you get into the car, you're reminded to go to the gym. These cues make the good habit easier to start because you don't have to think about it actively, the environment nudges you toward the desired behavior. This principle of environmental design extends beyond just reminders. It's about setting up your environment so that the right behavior is the default. For example, if you want to eat healthier, you can place fruits and vegetables at eye level in your kitchen, so they're the first thing you see when you open the fridge. The more effort it takes to choose unhealthy foods, such as needing to go out and buy them, the less likely you are to indulge in them. The power of convenience. Clear goes on to explain how convenience plays a massive role in habit formation. The more convenient a habit is, the more likely it is to become ingrained. This is why it's easier to form habits when they are integrated into your daily routine or are made as convenient as possible. For example, making a habit of journaling becomes easier if your journal is always nearby, on your nightstand or in your bag, rather than buried in a drawer. He also touches on the idea of effortless habits that happen almost automatically. For instance, people who habitually walk their dogs don't need to think twice about it, it's simply part of their daily rhythm. By focusing on making habits as convenient as possible, you eliminate the mental effort and resistance that might prevent you from taking action. The secret to long-term success: reduce effort for the positive, increase effort for the negative. The overarching theme of Chapter 12 is that by reducing the effort needed for positive behaviors and increasing the effort needed for negative behaviors, we can naturally align our actions with our goals. Clear reinforces that success is about making good habits easier and bad habits harder, so you don't need to rely on sheer willpower. The easier the habit is to perform, the more likely it is to become automatic over time. By applying the law of least effort, you not only make behavior change easier, but you also make it more sustainable in the long term. The less effort required to perform a habit, the more likely you are to repeat it. Conversely, if you make bad habits harder to do by adding friction, you'll be more successful in avoiding them. Chapter 13: How to Keep Your Good Habits on Track. In Chapter 13 of Atomic Habits, James Clear discusses how to maintain and sustain good habits over the long term. He focuses on the challenges that arise once the initial excitement of starting a new habit fades, and how to keep going even when motivation wanes. Clear argues that the key to lasting success isn't just starting a habit, but sticking with it, and he provides practical strategies for keeping habits on track. The chapter focuses on the idea that successful habits are not built on willpower alone but on the systems you create around your behavior. Clear discusses the importance of tracking progress, habit reviews, and environment design to ensure that your habits stay consistent and continue to evolve over time. The importance of tracking progress. Clear begins by emphasizing the importance of tracking your habits as a way to stay on course. He argues that humans are motivated by progress, and simply knowing that you're improving can be a powerful motivator. By tracking your progress, you can see how far you've come and feel a sense of achievement, which encourages you to keep going. He introduces the idea of habit tracking, where you record each day that you complete a particular habit. This simple strategy creates a visual cue of your progress, and it's easy to see how long you've been consistent. The key benefit of habit tracking is that it provides immediate feedback, which can be motivating. Clear suggests that tracking doesn't have to be complicated, even something as simple as a check mark on a calendar can create a sense of accomplishment. The Goldilocks rule, finding the balance between challenge and skill. Another important concept in Chapter 13 is the Goldilocks rule, which is the idea that you should always be working in the just right zone, where the difficulty of the habit is balanced with your skill level. If a habit is too easy, you're unlikely to stay motivated. If it's too difficult, you may feel overwhelmed and give up. The Goldilocks rule suggests that the most sustainable habits are those that are challenging but not too difficult. Clear explains that as you progress in your habits, you should aim to continually increase the challenge in small increments to keep your motivation high. For example, if your habit is running, and you've built up to running 2 miles, you can increase the distance or speed slightly each week to keep improving. This continuous challenge ensures that your habits stay engaging and prevent boredom from setting in. The power of identity and belief. Clear also explores how identity plays a crucial role in habit maintenance. He explains that the most effective habits are those that are tied to your identity, the person you believe yourself to be. For example, someone who identifies as a runner will find it easier to maintain the habit of running, because the habit is a reflection of their identity. On the other hand, someone who sees themselves as not a runner will likely struggle to keep running as a habit. To maintain your habits, it's important to affirm your identity through the habits you perform. Clear suggests reframing your habits in terms of the person you want to become. Instead of focusing on goals like losing weight, focus on becoming the type of person who enjoys healthy eating and exercise. This subtle shift makes habits feel less like a chore and more like a reflection of who you are. Habit reviews, reflecting and adjusting. Clear introduces the concept of habit reviews as a way to stay on track with your habits. A habit review involves periodically evaluating how well your habits are serving you and adjusting them as needed. Clear suggests doing a weekly or monthly review to reflect on your progress, identify what's working, and make changes to improve your habits. This process of reflection and adjustment is crucial for long-term success because it helps you identify potential roadblocks or areas for improvement. It also allows you to celebrate your successes, no matter how small, and keep you motivated. A habit review can help you spot when your habits are beginning to slip and course-correct before you fall too far off track. How to prevent bad habits from creeping in. In addition to strategies for maintaining good habits, Clear also offers advice on how to prevent bad habits from sneaking back in. He explains that once you've created a new positive habit, it's important to protect it by keeping bad habits at bay. One way to do this is through environment design, as discussed in earlier chapters. By eliminating cues for bad habits from your environment, you can reduce the temptation to engage in them. For example, if you're trying to reduce your screen time, you can make it harder to access your phone by turning off notifications, putting your phone in another room, or deleting apps that you don't need. By designing your environment to support good habits and hinder bad ones, you create an environment where success is more likely. Social influence and accountability. Clear also touches on the power of social influence in habit formation. He explains that we are heavily influenced by the people around us, and our habits can be shaped by the social environments we are in. If you surround yourself with people who support your goals and share similar habits, you're more likely to stick with your own good habits. To leverage social influence for good, Clear suggests finding an accountability partner or joining a group that aligns with your goals. Having someone to share your progress with, or someone who holds you accountable, can increase your commitment to your habits. Social pressure can be a positive force when it's used to encourage good behaviors and discourage bad ones. How to stay consistent without relying on motivation. Clear emphasizes that motivation is often unreliable and that the key to long-term habit success is consistency. He argues that consistency is more important than motivation because it's the small, repeated actions that lead to big changes over time. Instead of relying on motivation, Clear suggests focusing on making your habits as easy and frictionless as possible. When habits are easy to perform, you don't need to rely on willpower or motivation to follow through. For example, if you want to meditate every day, start by meditating for just 1 minute. Once it's easy to complete, you'll naturally want to increase the duration. Over time, the habit becomes so automatic that you don't need to think about it, it's just part of your routine. The role of patience and persistence. Finally, Clear discusses the importance of patience and persistence in maintaining habits. Even when progress feels slow, it's important to remember that long-term success is built on small, consistent actions. Clear stresses that the results of your habits will not always be immediately visible, but that doesn't mean you're not making progress. Habits take time to build and even longer to yield significant results. Clear emphasizes that patience is crucial because the true rewards of habits, like improved health, skills, or productivity, come over the long haul, not overnight. The key is to keep showing up, even when you don't see immediate results. Chapter 14: How to Make Good Habits Inevitable and Bad Habits Impossible. In Chapter 14 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explores the idea of automating good habits and removing obstacles to bad habits, to ensure that behaviors align with our goals and desires. He delves into how we can design our environment and our lives to make good habits inevitable while making bad habits impossible to sustain. This chapter is all about creating systems that make success easier and failure harder by changing the way we interact with our environment. The power of environment design. Clear starts the chapter by explaining that our environment plays a powerful role in shaping our behavior. The idea is simple: we are often influenced by the cues around us, whether we realize it or not. The people we interact with, the spaces we inhabit, and the objects we see daily all serve as constant cues that either reinforce our good habits or trigger bad ones. One of the most important steps in making good habits inevitable is environment design, the process of deliberately structuring your environment to support your desired behaviors. Clear suggests that if you want to make a habit easier to follow, you should arrange your surroundings to encourage it. For example, if you want to exercise more, putting your gym clothes next to your bed makes it easier to get dressed and head to the gym. The simpler you make it for yourself to start a habit, the more likely you are to stick with it. Clear also emphasizes that bad habits thrive in environments that support them. If you're trying to reduce your screen time, for instance, keeping your phone out of reach or turning off notifications can help remove the constant temptation to check your device. By making bad habits less convenient and reducing the cues for them, you can more easily avoid falling into these behaviors. The role of commitment devices. In addition to changing your environment, Clear introduces the concept of commitment devices, tools that lock you into a decision before you can back out. These devices force you to follow through with your intentions, even when you might be tempted to quit or give in to a bad habit. For example, if you're trying to quit smoking, you might commit to paying a friend a certain amount of money every time you smoke. The financial consequence serves as a deterrent to the behavior, making it less likely that you'll give in. Commitment devices can be incredibly effective in forcing you to follow through with your goals, as they limit the temptation to deviate from your plan. Clear mentions that commitment devices can also be used to automate good habits. For example, setting up a direct debit for a charity donation every month can make you more consistent with giving. By committing to something in advance, you create a structure that holds you accountable, even when your motivation falters. The importance of automating habits. Another important concept in this chapter is automation. Clear explains that one of the best ways to make good habits inevitable is to automate them as much as possible. This involves setting up systems or routines that make it automatic for you to complete the habit without requiring much thought or effort. Clear provides examples of how people have automated certain behaviors in their lives. For instance, many people automate their savings by setting up automatic transfers from their checking accounts to their savings accounts. This makes saving money a habit that happens without any active effort or decision-making. Automation can also be applied to other habits. If you want to eat healthier, you might automate the process by preparing meals ahead of time and packing your lunch the night before. By making the habit part of your routine, you reduce the friction and make it more likely that you'll follow through. The power of the 2-minute rule. Clear revisits the 2-minute rule, which states that any habit can be started in just 2 minutes. This rule encourages you to reduce your habits to the smallest, easiest action that takes no more than 2 minutes to complete. The goal is to make starting the habit so simple that there's no excuse not to do it. For instance, if you want to read more, start by reading just 1 page of a book. If you want to work out, begin by doing 1 push-up. The key is that once you begin, it's easier to continue the habit because you've already started. Over time, this minimal investment can build momentum and turn into a larger habit. Clear highlights that the 2-minute rule works because it lowers the barrier to entry. The less effort it takes to start, the more likely you are to continue, which makes it easier to build a consistent routine. How to use habit stacking for long-term success. Another technique Clear recommends is habit stacking, which involves attaching a new habit to an existing one. The idea is that if you already have a well-established habit in your routine, you can stack a new habit on top of it, making it easier to remember and follow through with the new behavior. For example, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you could stack the habit of doing 5 minutes of stretching right afterward. By associating a new habit with a behavior you already do automatically, you can make the new habit part of your daily routine. Clear notes that habit stacking works because it takes advantage of existing routines. When a behavior is already ingrained in your routine, adding something new doesn't require much extra effort. It becomes part of your natural flow, which makes it easier to maintain over the long term. Making bad habits impossible. The chapter concludes with Clear's advice on making bad habits impossible to engage in. The key to this is to remove all cues that prompt the behavior and increase the friction required to carry out the bad habit. By making bad habits more difficult, you decrease the likelihood of performing them. For example, if you're trying to stop drinking soda, you might remove all soda from your house and only buy healthier drinks. If you're trying to cut back on screen time, you can delete apps from your phone or place it in another room. By making the action of performing the bad habit more difficult, you make it less likely that you'll give in to temptation. Clear suggests that by creating friction for bad habits, you force yourself to make a conscious decision each time you're tempted. This gives you more control over your behavior and makes it easier to stick to your goals. The role of social influence. Clear also discusses how social influence can play a powerful role in making habits inevitable. He explains that people are highly influenced by the behavior of those around them, so it's essential to surround yourself with people who support your goals and reinforce your positive behaviors. If your friends and family share similar values, you're more likely to succeed in building lasting habits. This principle is why accountability works so well for habit maintenance. Having someone to check in with or share your progress with makes it more likely that you'll follow through on your intentions. Clear suggests finding a group or community that supports your goals to increase your chances of success. Chapter 15, The Secret to Results That Last. In Chapter 15 of Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals the secret to results that last by focusing on the importance of delayed gratification and the power of small improvements over time. This chapter dives deeper into how tiny changes, compounded consistently, create profound transformations. Clear emphasizes that it's not about making big changes quickly, but rather about making small adjustments consistently, which, over time, can lead to extraordinary results. The plateau of latent potential. Clear introduces the concept of the plateau of latent potential, which explains why habits can sometimes feel frustrating in the beginning. You might feel like your efforts are going unnoticed because the results aren't immediately visible. This plateau occurs when you start making positive changes but don't see any significant progress. The key point is that results don't appear immediately. The benefits of your habits are often delayed. Think of it like planting a seed. If you plant a seed in the ground, you don't see the tree right away, even though it's starting to grow underground. Similarly, your efforts with habits may not show immediate results, but with consistent effort, progress will emerge. Clear notes that this is why consistency is so critical. You have to trust that the results will come if you keep showing up, even when you don't see any progress in the short term. Clear uses the metaphor of an ice cube to further explain this point. When you put an ice cube in a room and raise the temperature from 25 degrees Fahrenheit to 26 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing changes. But at a certain point, the ice cube will begin to melt quickly once it hits the melting point. The incremental changes you make every day might not feel like much, but they are laying the foundation for a larger transformation. Eventually, these small efforts will lead to big results, just like the ice cube melting after the temperature rises past a certain threshold. Compound growth, the power of tiny gains. Clear emphasizes the importance of compound growth, the idea that small improvements, when repeated consistently, accumulate into massive results. He compares this to the power of compound interest in finance. Just as money grows exponentially when interest compounds over time, small habits that you repeat daily lead to massive improvements in the long run. He explains that 1% improvements every day may seem insignificant at first, but they compound over time and lead to results far greater than any one-time effort. For example, if you improve by just 1% every day, you'll be 37 times better by the end of the year. However, if you get 1% worse every day, you'll end up nearly zero by the end of the year. Clear points out that most people expect immediate, dramatic results when they start a new habit, but they fail to see the gradual improvement that occurs under the surface. Delayed gratification, the ability to endure the wait for bigger results, is the key to success. Those who succeed over time are the ones who understand that small improvements today lead to big transformations tomorrow. The importance of systems over goals. One of the central ideas of atomic habits is that systems are more important than goals. Clear discusses the idea that goals are great for setting direction, but systems are what get you there. A goal is the result you want to achieve, but a system is the process that leads to those results. Many people focus only on the end goal, but Clear argues that it's the systems, your daily habits and routines, that make the difference. He stresses that systems allow for consistent progress, while goals often create pressure to perform quickly. Focusing on the system gives you more control because it's about the process of improvement, rather than the outcome. For instance, if your goal is to run a marathon, the goal itself is distant, but the system, running every day, ensures that you improve and get closer to your goal. By focusing on systems, you enjoy the journey, and the results will naturally follow. The 4 laws of behavior change and their impact on habits. Clear also revisits the 4 laws of behavior change, which are crucial for building and maintaining habits. These laws help you design habits that are easy to perform and hard to break. Make it obvious. The first step to making a habit stick is to make the cue for your habit clear and visible. You can do this by environment design, like placing your gym clothes in plain sight if you want to exercise. Make it attractive. The more appealing the habit is, the more likely you are to perform it. By associating a habit with a positive experience, such as listening to your favorite podcast while exercising, you increase its attractiveness. Make it easy. The easier the habit is, the less effort it takes to complete. Breaking habits down into simple, small steps makes them more accessible and sustainable. Make it satisfying. Clear emphasizes that rewards are an essential part of habit formation. When a habit is immediately rewarding, it reinforces the behavior and makes you want to repeat it. These laws serve as a framework for creating habits that stick and ensuring that they become part of your routine. By designing your environment to support your desired habits, making habits enjoyable, and focusing on small, incremental changes, you ensure long-term success. The role of identity in habit formation. Clear also discusses the relationship between identity and habit formation. He explains that the most powerful way to change behavior is to change your identity. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, focus on who you want to become. For example, instead of saying, "I want to lose weight," say, "I am a healthy eater." When your habits align with your identity, they become an integral part of who you are, and it's much easier to maintain them. By viewing habits through the lens of identity, you shift the focus from external results to internal beliefs. This approach helps you to make habits more sustainable because they are not dependent on willpower or motivation but are rooted in your self-concept. The more you embody the identity of the person you want to become, the easier it is to adopt and maintain habits that align with that identity. The importance of patience and persistence. Clear emphasizes that patience is essential for making habits stick, particularly because of the lag between the start of a habit and its visible results. The key to habit success is persistence, even when the results are not immediately visible. Over time, consistent effort will create a compounding effect, and the results will eventually appear. The longer you stick with a habit, the more likely you are to see significant results. However, success doesn't happen overnight. In this context, Clear also mentions that habits are often about small wins that can build up over time. You don't have to have dramatic changes every day, but if you focus on showing up and making small progress, the accumulation of these wins will create long-term success. Taking advantage of the Goldilocks rule. Clear revisits the Goldilocks rule, the principle that people are most motivated when they're working at the edge of their ability. This rule suggests that for a habit to be sustainable, it must be challenging enough to keep you engaged but not so difficult that it feels impossible. As you continue to improve, the challenge should evolve so that you remain engaged and motivated. If a habit becomes too easy, you risk losing interest, but if it's too hard, you'll likely give up. By finding the balance between challenge and skill, you keep the habit process engaging and maintain a sense of progress and improvement. Chapter 16, How to Review Your Habits and Make Adjustments. In Chapter 16 of Atomic Habits, James Clear addresses a crucial aspect of building long-term, sustainable habits, habit review and making adjustments. He explains that habits are not something you set once and forget about. Instead, they require regular assessment and tweaking to ensure they continue to align with your goals, improve your life, and keep you motivated. The chapter explores strategies for reviewing your habits, reflecting on your progress, and adjusting your systems to maximize long-term success. The importance of regular habit reviews. Clear begins the chapter by explaining the necessity of regularly reviewing your habits. Just like any other process in life, habits need to be evaluated periodically to ensure they're working for you. He suggests that reviewing your habits can be a powerful tool for identifying what's working and what isn't, and it can help you figure out what changes are necessary. In a habit review, you reflect on both the process and the results. Are the habits you're following truly moving you closer to your long-term goals? Are they consistent with the identity you want to create? If you answer these questions honestly, you can identify areas where your habits might need adjustments. Clear advises using a simple reflection tool for habit reviews, like the Habit Scorecard, which was introduced earlier in the book. This tool allows you to track your behaviors and assess whether they are contributing to or detracting from your goals. The scorecard helps clarify what you're doing well, where you're struggling, and where improvements can be made. The role of reflection in habit building. Clear highlights the power of reflection in helping you align your habits with your desired identity and goals. Often, we get so caught up in the daily grind that we don't take time to reflect on whether our current habits are still in line with the person we want to become. Reflection gives you the opportunity to pause and ask, what's working for me, and what's not. Reflection is also an essential tool for learning. When you assess your habits regularly, you can spot patterns in your behavior, both good and bad. This awareness is key for making adjustments and preventing you from falling into bad habits that might be slowly undermining your progress. Reflection also helps you maintain focus on the bigger picture, ensuring that the daily actions you take are aligned with your long-term vision. By taking the time to reflect, you can also celebrate small wins and accomplishments, which boosts motivation and reinforces the positive habits you're building. As Clear notes, even small successes matter, and acknowledging them regularly helps keep you on track. The importance of flexibility and adaptability. One of the key points in this chapter is the idea that your habits need to be flexible and adaptable. Life changes, and so do your goals and priorities. Clear stresses that it's essential to remain open to modifying your habits as your life evolves. What worked for you last year may not be the best approach this year, and that's okay. The point is to stay adaptable and make sure your habits remain aligned with your current circumstances and aspirations. Clear mentions that rigidity in your habit system can lead to frustration and burnout. For example, if you set a goal to work out every single day but find that life gets in the way, it's better to adjust your goal rather than abandon it altogether. Flexibility is key to making sure that you're not setting yourself up for failure by holding on to unrealistic expectations. Adjusting your habits based on results. Another essential aspect of habit reviews is adjusting your habits based on the results you're seeing. Clear suggests that if a habit isn't working as you'd hoped, it's time to tweak it. Perhaps the habit is too difficult, or you've set your expectations too high. Maybe the system you've put in place isn't providing the desired results. In these cases, small adjustments are often necessary to get back on track. Clear also explains that feedback loops play a significant role in habit formation. Regularly reviewing and adjusting your habits allows you to create positive feedback loops that reinforce good behaviors. For instance, if your habit of writing every morning is getting easier, you can build on that success by increasing your writing time or making the task more challenging. On the flip side, if your writing habit is no longer serving you, the review process gives you the opportunity to pivot. The power of continuous improvement. Clear emphasizes the importance of continuous improvement, the concept that there is always room to get better. When it comes to habit formation, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Even if you encounter setbacks or challenges along the way, it's important to view these moments as opportunities to improve rather than failures. In this chapter, Clear mentions the idea of Kaizen, a Japanese term for continuous improvement. Kaizen involves making small, incremental changes that build up over time, which is central to the way habits should be approached. By continually reviewing and improving your habits, you can ensure that you're always moving in the right direction and that your habits are evolving to meet your needs. Creating systems for habit improvement. Clear also provides practical advice for creating systems that support ongoing habit improvement. One of the most effective ways to make improvements is to automate the review process. For instance, scheduling a weekly or monthly habit review can make the process a regular part of your routine. This ensures that reflection and adjustments become an integral part of your habit-building system. You can also use tools like journals, habit trackers, or apps to help you track your progress and make adjustments more easily. Clear suggests that when you have a system in place for habit review, it removes the burden of having to remember to do it. Instead, it becomes a natural part of your routine, making it more likely that you'll stick with it. Additionally, Clear mentions the importance of building habits that are simple to track and review. If you make a habit too complicated or difficult to measure, it becomes harder to assess its effectiveness. By keeping your habits simple and easy to track, you can streamline the review process and make adjustments more quickly. The role of accountability in habit review. Another crucial aspect of habit review is accountability. Clear explains that having an accountability partner can significantly enhance the habit review process. Whether it's a friend, mentor, or colleague, someone who holds you accountable can help you stay on track and provide a different perspective when reviewing your habits. Accountability partners can help you identify blind spots and offer constructive feedback, making your habit reviews more effective. They can also help you celebrate successes and stay motivated, especially during challenging times when your habits feel stagnant. The final thought: stay the course. Clear ends the chapter with a reminder that habit building is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be times when progress feels slow, and habits feel harder to maintain. However, the key to success is staying the course and continuously reviewing and adjusting your habits. Progress may not always be linear, but with patience and persistence, you'll eventually see the results of your efforts. By regularly reviewing your habits, making necessary adjustments, and staying flexible, you ensure that your habits are working for you and that you're constantly moving closer to your desired outcomes. Chapter 17: How to Stop Procrastinating by Using the 2-Minute Rule. In Chapter 17 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tackles one of the most common challenges we face when trying to build good habits: procrastination. He introduces a simple but powerful strategy called the 2-minute rule, which helps break the cycle of procrastination and makes it easier to start new habits. The key insight of this chapter is that the hardest part of any habit is often simply starting. Clear explains that by focusing on the first 2 minutes of a habit, you can overcome the inertia that causes procrastination and build momentum toward long-term success. The power of starting small. Clear begins the chapter by discussing how we often sabotage our habit-building efforts by trying to do too much, too soon. We set high expectations for ourselves and believe that if we can't commit to an hour at the gym or a full hour of studying, then it's not worth starting at all. This kind of thinking leads to procrastination, and as a result, we never even begin. The 2-minute rule is designed to solve this problem. Clear's idea is simple: when you feel resistance to starting a new habit, focus on the first 2 minutes. Make the habit so small that it's almost impossible to say no. For example, instead of committing to a full workout, you commit to just putting on your workout clothes. Instead of planning to write a chapter of a book, just write 1 sentence. The idea is that once you start, you'll build momentum, and the task will feel easier to complete. The first 2 minutes act as a gateway, helping you overcome procrastination and make the habit feel less daunting. Starting small is powerful because it allows you to trick your brain into beginning without overwhelming it. How the 2-minute rule works. Clear explains that the 2-minute rule is effective because it takes advantage of momentum. Once you start a habit, even with just 2 minutes, it's much easier to continue. This is in line with the idea of behavioral momentum, which states that the more you do something, the easier it becomes. The 2-minute rule helps you overcome the resistance to starting, which is often the biggest hurdle. Clear uses the example of reading a book. Instead of telling yourself you're going to read an entire chapter, commit to reading just 1 page. The 2-minute rule makes starting the habit so easy that there's no excuse not to do it. Once you're reading the page, you'll likely read more, but even if you don't, you've still started. The goal of the 2-minute rule isn't to finish the task but to create a situation where you can consistently begin. Over time, these small beginnings build up and become automatic. When you're starting small and easy, the habit becomes much less intimidating, and it becomes easier to incorporate it into your daily routine. The importance of reducing friction. Clear introduces the concept of friction, anything that makes a habit more difficult to perform. When you're trying to build a new habit, the more friction you add, the harder it becomes to get started. For example, if you want to start exercising in the morning but you keep your gym clothes in the other room, that extra step of going to find them adds friction to the process. The more friction, the more likely you are to procrastinate. The 2-minute rule helps reduce this friction by making the habit small and easy to begin. The less friction, the easier it is to start. Clear emphasizes that you should try to design your environment in a way that makes the habit even easier to begin. For instance, leaving your workout clothes out the night before or placing your book on your pillow can make it more likely that you'll start reading. By reducing friction, you make it easier to engage in the habit, which increases the likelihood that you'll continue. Over time, as you repeatedly practice the small version of the habit, you'll naturally build up the ability to do it for longer periods. How the 2-minute rule helps you build momentum. Clear explains that momentum is crucial for habit formation. Once you get started, even if it's just for 2 minutes, your brain starts to get used to the idea of doing the activity. This momentum can help you push through the difficult moments when motivation is low. For example, if you commit to writing for just 2 minutes each day, over time, you may find that you're writing for longer stretches. Once you've started, it becomes easier to continue. The brain becomes accustomed to the habit, and eventually, it will feel odd not to do it. The key is not to focus on perfection or the end result but simply on getting started, no matter how small the action may be. Clear emphasizes that starting small doesn't mean settling for mediocrity. Instead, it's about getting over the initial hurdle of procrastination and building momentum toward larger achievements. If you want to write a book, starting with 2 minutes a day might seem small, but it sets you on a path where writing regularly becomes part of your routine. The role of identity in habit formation. Clear ties the 2-minute rule to identity-based habits, a concept introduced earlier in the book. He suggests that rather than focusing solely on the outcome, e.g., reading more books or getting fit, you should focus on who you want to become. For example, if you want to become a reader, your goal should be to read every day, even if it's just for 2 minutes. The 2-minute rule helps you align your actions with the person you want to become. By committing to small actions, you're reinforcing the identity of the person you wish to be. Each time you take action, no matter how small, you send a signal to your brain that reinforces the desired identity. This shifts your mindset from, "I am trying to form a habit," to, "I am the kind of person who does this regularly." Examples of the 2-minute rule in action. Clear provides several examples of how the 2-minute rule can be applied to various habits. Exercise. Instead of committing to a full workout, start by putting on your workout clothes or doing 1 push-up. Once you start, you'll often find it easier to continue. Writing. Rather than telling yourself to write a full chapter, aim to write for just 2 minutes. Even if you only write 1 sentence, you've started. Studying. If you want to study more, commit to studying for just 2 minutes. Once you've begun, you may continue, but even if you stop after 2 minutes, you've made progress. The beauty of the 2-minute rule is that it works for virtually any habit, whether it's improving physical fitness, learning a new skill, or working on a personal project. The key is to make the habit so small that it seems trivial to not do it. Conclusion: the importance of starting. Clear concludes the chapter by reiterating the power of starting small. Procrastination is often the result of the fear of not being able to complete a task perfectly. The 2-minute rule removes this barrier by making it so easy to start that you'll find yourself naturally continuing. Over time, the habit will become a regular part of your routine, and you'll see significant results from the small actions you took consistently. By following the 2-minute rule, you can build lasting habits that become ingrained in your daily life. Starting is the hardest part, and once you get past that initial resistance, you'll be well on your way to building habits that serve your goals and help you improve over time. Chapter 18, The Goldilocks Rule, How to Stay Motivated in the Long Run. In Chapter 18 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces the Goldilocks Rule, which explains how to maintain motivation and avoid burnout when building long-term habits. This rule centers around finding the sweet spot between boredom and challenge, where habits feel just difficult enough to keep you engaged but not so difficult that they cause frustration or burnout. The Goldilocks rule is based on a simple principle: human beings are most motivated when they are working on tasks that are just beyond their current level of ability, but still within reach. The sweet spot of motivation. Clear explains that motivation is closely linked to the difficulty of the task. If a task is too easy, we become bored and lose interest. If it's too hard, we feel frustrated and give up. The Goldilocks zone is the space between these two extremes, where the challenge is just right. When you're in this zone, you're pushed enough to stay engaged, but not so much that you feel overwhelmed. This concept explains why people are often motivated at the beginning of a new habit. When you start something new, the challenge is fresh and exciting, and you're in the Goldilocks zone. However, over time, the novelty wears off, and the task becomes either too easy or too difficult. That's when many people lose motivation and abandon their goals. Clear emphasizes that motivation thrives and the task is appropriately challenging. It's not enough to just set a goal and expect it to be easy. The key is to maintain a level of difficulty that keeps you engaged and eager to continue, even when things start to feel repetitive. The role of deliberate practice. The Goldilocks rule is rooted in the principle of deliberate practice, which is a method of improving performance by consistently pushing yourself just beyond your current abilities. Clear uses the example of musicians, athletes, and experts in any field to explain how this process works. Experts don't improve by doing the same thing over and over at their current level. Instead, they constantly push themselves to the edge of their ability, where they can make small improvements and continue growing. Deliberate practice is about continuous improvement. By finding tasks that challenge you without overwhelming you, you can improve consistently over time. This concept is true not only for physical skills but also for cognitive and emotional tasks, such as learning new knowledge or improving your mental habits. Clear suggests that to keep habits exciting and sustainable, you should regularly adjust the challenge so that it's always aligned with your growing abilities. This creates a cycle of continuous improvement that makes progress feel satisfying and engaging. For example, if you're learning to play an instrument, you wouldn't keep playing the same piece over and over. Instead, you would challenge yourself with slightly more difficult pieces that stretch your abilities. Why we lose motivation over time. Clear explains why motivation tends to decrease after the initial excitement of starting a new habit. Initial motivation is usually fueled by novelty, but as you settle into the habit, it starts to feel less challenging and more routine. Once the task becomes too easy, you lose interest. On the other hand, if the task becomes too difficult or doesn't produce immediate results, you get frustrated and may give up. This is why so many people fail to maintain long-term habits. They either stop challenging themselves or don't adjust their habits as their skills improve. The key to maintaining motivation is to continuously adjust the challenge level to keep the task in the Goldilocks zone. For example, if you're working on strength training, you could gradually increase the weight or the number of reps to keep yourself progressing without overwhelming your body. If you're reading more books, you can try more complex texts once you've mastered easier ones. Clear also mentions that small wins and incremental progress play a huge role in staying motivated. When you can see that you're improving, even in small ways, it reinforces the belief that you're on the right track, which keeps you motivated to continue. The importance of patience in mastery. One of the challenges of long-term habits is the time it takes to improve. Clear notes that mastery of any skill doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience and persistence. The Goldilocks rule suggests that you can sustain motivation by focusing on incremental improvements. If you're always pushing yourself just enough to stay engaged but not frustrated, you'll build confidence and stay motivated, even when progress feels slow. Mastery is a long-term process, and most people give up before they reach it because they don't have the patience to stay in the Goldilocks zone for long enough. Clear encourages readers to adopt a mindset of gradual improvement. It's not about achieving perfection but about improving a little bit each day. With time, those small improvements add up to significant progress. Why some people can maintain motivation for decades. Clear provides the example of long-term experts, such as professional athletes and musicians, who maintain motivation for years or even decades. These individuals have mastered the art of staying in the Goldilocks zone. They continuously find ways to challenge themselves without overburdening themselves, allowing them to keep improving over time. What sets these individuals apart is their ability to embrace the process of gradual improvement. They're not focused on an immediate end goal but rather on the journey of getting better. By maintaining this mindset, they can sustain their motivation for much longer than those who focus only on achieving a specific outcome. Clear also notes that these long-term experts often have a deep love for the process. They enjoy the challenges that come with their practice and find satisfaction in small victories along the way. This love for the process is a key factor in maintaining motivation over the long term. How to apply the Goldilocks rule to your own life. Clear encourages readers to apply the Goldilocks rule to their own habits to maintain long-term motivation. The key is to constantly adjust your habits to stay in the sweet spot between challenge and ability. If you've mastered a particular habit, don't let it become too easy. Instead, find ways to make it slightly more difficult or add new dimensions to it. For example, if you're building a reading habit, you can set a challenge to read more pages or explore more complex topics. If you're improving your writing, challenge yourself to write longer pieces or tackle new genres. In this way, you continue to progress and maintain the engagement that keeps you motivated. Clear also advises that it's important to celebrate small wins and recognize progress. This reinforces the feeling of improvement and helps maintain the belief that you're on the right track. Over time, these small wins build up and create a sense of mastery, which further strengthens your motivation. Chapter 19, The Secret to Results That Last. In Chapter 19 of Atomic Habits, James Clear explores a crucial concept that many overlook when trying to build lasting habits: the importance of focusing on identity rather than results. This chapter introduces the idea that long-term success doesn't come from merely setting goals or trying to achieve specific results. Instead, it comes from shifting your focus toward who you want to become rather than what you want to achieve. The power of identity-based habits. Clear emphasizes the importance of identity when it comes to behavior change. Most people think of habits in terms of outcomes: losing weight, writing a book, running a marathon, but these types of goals don't address the root cause of behavior. Instead of focusing on the end goal, Clear suggests that people should shift their attention to their identity. Ask yourself, who do I want to become, rather than, what do I want to achieve? This shift in thinking is the foundation for long-term change. Clear argues that habits are not just about what you do, but about who you believe you are. For example, if you want to become a runner, you don't just focus on running a marathon, you focus on becoming a runner. Your actions will start to align with that identity, and as you reinforce your new identity with small actions, your habits will become more ingrained. Identity-based versus outcome-based habits. Clear contrasts identity-based habits with outcome-based habits, explaining that focusing on identity makes habits more sustainable. Outcome-based habits are often short-term, driven by the desire for quick results. People who rely on outcomes, like, I want to lose 20 pounds, might work hard at first but often fall off track when results aren't immediate or when the challenge feels too difficult. In contrast, identity-based habits are built on the belief that you are someone who consistently takes actions aligned with the person you want to become. For instance, a person who identifies as a healthy eater will naturally make food choices that align with that identity, not because they are focusing on losing weight, but because it is part of who they are. The two types of identity. Clear introduces the idea that there are two types of identities. The current identity, the way you see yourself right now. This is shaped by your past actions and habits. If you have been someone who rarely exercises, for instance, your current identity may be that of a sedentary person. The desired identity, the version of yourself that you want to become. This is the person you wish to be in the future, such as someone who runs regularly, eats healthy, or is disciplined and organized. The problem is that many people's current identity doesn't align with their desired identity, and that misalignment can be a major obstacle to change. When people try to build new habits, they often fail because they are trying to adopt behaviors that don't feel consistent with their current identity. The key to lasting change is making small but consistent shifts in how you see yourself. When your actions match the identity you want to adopt, your habits will follow. The feedback loop of identity and habits. One of the most powerful concepts in this chapter is Clear's explanation of the feedback loop between identity and habits. Your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes your habits. This loop is continuous. As you perform actions that align with the identity you want to embody, you reinforce that identity, and the stronger that identity becomes, the more those actions will become automatic. For example, if you want to become a reader, you don't start by reading 100 books. Instead, you start by reading a few pages every day. Each time you do, you reinforce the identity of being someone who reads. Over time, that identity becomes stronger, and reading becomes a more natural part of who you are. Clear also stresses that small wins are crucial in reinforcing this loop. Every small action that aligns with your desired identity, whether it's reading a page, eating a healthy meal, or going for a walk, adds up over time to reinforce the new version of yourself. Focus on systems, not goals. Another key point Clear makes in this chapter is that goals are not enough to ensure long-term success. While goals provide direction, it is the systems you create to support those goals that ultimately lead to success. Focusing solely on goals can cause you to overlook the daily actions and habits that lead to those goals. Instead, Clear encourages readers to focus on creating systems that naturally align with the identity they want to build. For example, if you want to be a writer, you don't just set a goal to write a book, but instead focus on the system of writing every day. Over time, this system will become ingrained as part of your identity as a writer, and the goal will take care of itself. This shift from goal-oriented thinking to system-oriented thinking is fundamental for creating lasting changes. Systems focus on the process, not just the outcome, and the process is where identity is built. The 4 laws of behavior change and identity. Clear links the principles discussed in this chapter to the 4 laws of behavior change, cue, craving, response, and reward, which were introduced earlier in the book. He explains that building identity-based habits requires aligning your behavior with your desired identity in each stage of the habit loop. Cue, design your environment to trigger the behaviors that reflect your desired identity. For example, if you want to be a runner, place your running shoes by the door so that you're reminded to run each morning. Craving, associate the habit with a reward that reinforces your new identity. If running makes you feel energized and proud of yourself, that feeling reinforces the identity of being a runner. Response, take action that aligns with your identity. Even a small action, like running for 10 minutes, reinforces your self-image as a runner. Reward, the reward reinforces the behavior, making it easier to repeat the habit and strengthen the identity over time. By applying the 4 laws in this way, Clear shows how habits can be built around identity and how that identity can drive long-term success. Belief and the power of identity. Clear also emphasizes the role of belief in habit formation. Believing that you can become the person you want to be is essential. People who don't believe they are capable of change are less likely to take consistent action. On the other hand, those who have a strong belief in their ability to change are more likely to succeed. Belief doesn't come from wishing for change, it comes from acting in ways that reinforce that belief. The more actions you take that reflect your desired identity, the more you will believe in your ability to become that person. Chapter 20, The Goldilocks Rule, How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work. In Chapter 20 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces the Goldilocks Rule, a powerful principle that helps explain why people struggle to stay motivated and how they can overcome this challenge to maintain long-term success. This rule is a crucial part of the equation when it comes to building habits that last. The science of motivation. Clear begins by explaining how motivation works in the brain. He states that motivation is often linked to the difficulty level of a task. If a task is too easy or too difficult, you're less likely to remain motivated to keep working on it. For instance, if something is too easy, you get bored and lose interest, and if it's too hard, you get frustrated and give up. Motivation thrives in that sweet spot between boredom and frustration, where the challenge is just right for your current skill level. This is where the Goldilocks rule comes in. The rule, named after the famous fairy tale character who preferred things that were just right, suggests that to stay motivated and maintain a habit over time, you must work on tasks that are at the right level of difficulty, neither too hard nor too easy, but just challenging enough to keep you engaged. The Goldilocks zone. Clear explains that the Goldilocks zone is the range of difficulty that keeps us engaged. When we work in this zone, the task is neither too easy nor too hard. It's a place where we feel stretched but not overwhelmed. For example, if you're learning to play the guitar, playing basic chords might feel too easy, but learning advanced solos might be frustrating. The Goldilocks zone would be practicing songs that are just a little more difficult than your current skill level, which keeps you in a state of optimal engagement. This principle applies not only to habits related to work or study but also to personal development. Whether you're trying to improve your fitness, build a career, or learn a new skill, the key is to continually push yourself just beyond your current ability. The small increase in difficulty keeps your brain stimulated, which helps you maintain motivation and sustain your effort over time. How the Goldilocks rule works in practice. The Goldilocks rule is not just a theory, it's a practical tool that can help you stay motivated and make progress in any area of life. For example, if you're working on fitness, instead of just walking at the same pace every day, try increasing the intensity of your workout slightly each week. This incremental challenge keeps your body and mind engaged and helps you make consistent progress. Clear emphasizes that maintaining the Goldilocks zone is crucial for building sustainable habits. If you're trying to write every day, for instance, you might begin by writing 500 words a day. Once you're comfortable with that, you might challenge yourself to write 1,000 words per day. This slight increase in difficulty keeps you progressing without feeling overwhelmed. However, if the task becomes too difficult, you might need to adjust and simplify the task until it returns to the Goldilocks zone. The role of immediate feedback. One of the keys to maintaining motivation is immediate feedback. Clear explains that when you work in the Goldilocks zone, you're more likely to receive immediate feedback on your progress. This feedback, whether it's seeing your writing word count go up or feeling your muscles grow stronger from exercise, reinforces your effort and keeps you motivated. Immediate feedback helps you know whether you're succeeding, and success leads to further motivation. Clear also points out that delayed feedback can have the opposite effect. If you're working hard on something but don't see results for a long time, such as when you're trying to lose weight or save money, it's easy to lose motivation. But when you work in the Goldilocks zone, the results are often visible in real time, which boosts your sense of accomplishment and keeps you moving forward. Why the Goldilocks rule is essential for long-term success. Clear argues that the Goldilocks rule is the key to sustaining motivation over the long term. Without the right level of challenge, it's easy to lose interest or become discouraged. The Goldilocks zone keeps you in a state of optimal challenge where you feel engaged, which makes you more likely to stick with your habits. The rule helps explain why some people are able to keep up their habits for years, while others struggle to maintain motivation after a short period. Clear also highlights that growth comes from this continuous challenge. Every time you push yourself just beyond your current ability, you expand your capabilities, which ultimately leads to mastery. Without consistent growth, people become bored or frustrated, and their habits begin to fade. The Goldilocks rule prevents this from happening by ensuring that the difficulty level of your tasks is always calibrated to your current skills. The importance of consistency. Another important takeaway from Chapter 20 is that the Goldilocks rule encourages consistency. Consistency is essential for making progress in any area, and the Goldilocks zone helps people stick with their habits long enough to see results. Clear argues that consistency in small increments of challenge is the key to building momentum, which makes it easier to stay on track and eventually achieve bigger goals. How to apply the Goldilocks rule to your habits. Clear provides practical tips for applying the Goldilocks rule to your own habits. Here are a few ways to implement the rule effectively. Assess your current skill level. To stay in the Goldilocks zone, you need to know where you stand. Assess your current ability, whether it's in exercise, writing, or any other area, and then challenge yourself just slightly beyond that level. Set incremental challenges. Don't jump into tasks that are too difficult. Instead, set small, incremental goals that stretch your abilities without overwhelming you. As you succeed, gradually increase the difficulty. Track your progress. Keep track of your results, whether it's tracking your word count, the number of steps you've walked, or the weight you can lift. Tracking helps you see your progress, which provides valuable feedback and keeps you motivated. Make adjustments as needed. Sometimes the challenge may become too difficult or too easy. Don't be afraid to make adjustments. If you're getting frustrated, scale back the difficulty a little. If you're getting bored, increase the challenge. Celebrate small wins. Small wins, like hitting a mini goal or achieving a personal best, are powerful motivators. Celebrate these wins to reinforce your identity and keep the momentum going. As we reach the end of this journey through Atomic Habits by James Clear, one thing becomes crystal clear: the small, everyday choices you make hold the power to reshape your life. This isn't just a book about habits, it's a blueprint for transformation, showing that real, lasting success comes not from monumental changes but from the quiet, consistent power of tiny improvements compounded over time. It's about becoming the architect of your own destiny by mastering the simple yet profound art of showing up, even in the smallest of ways. At Mindful Audio, we believe in sparking that same kind of transformation through ideas that ignite your mind and fuel your growth. Our mission is to deliver content that resonates deeply, inspires action, and empowers you to take charge of your life. Just as Atomic Habits reveals the science and art behind sustainable change, Mindful Audio aims to be your companion on this journey, providing insights and motivation to help you stay the course and build the life you envision, one small step at a time. Whether you're working on building healthier habits, chasing your dreams, or simply trying to become 1% better every day, this combination of Clear's powerful strategies and the knowledge shared on our channel is your formula for success. Let's keep growing, keep improving, and most importantly, keep believing in the power of small actions to create a big impact. Together, we'll turn knowledge into action and action into transformation. The journey doesn't end here, it's only just beginning.